PlayStation 2 was the first console I ever played and marked the start of a long journey of $5 games and shovelware. But like any person that played this console, it truly started here. It definitely made an impression on me. Sure, I was young, but it had a mysterious yet comforting atmosphere. I've always loved video games. Good, bad, jaggers, but nothing's better than a console boot up. It's literally the first thing you see upon turning any console on. Any console. I remember watching videos showing the evolution of console startups and thinking, why is the Wii so bad? And 10 years later, here's my response to that. How's it going? Gone here. Let's rank some console startups. Before I begin the ranking, we need to know what constitutes a good console startup. I personally believe a good startup is one that goes all in showcasing the system's power, while having a great visual identity and branding. But above all else, there's the tune. A startup is defined by its sound. It's undoubtedly the most recognizable part of any console. Thousands of games were released for the PS1 and were played by different people, but its startup sound is embedded in the minds of millions. Bottom line, show me a logo hopping on the screen with angelic music and we're golden. So without further ado, let's begin the bias fest. Please note this is just my opinion. At the bottom of the list, we have the 5200 boot-up screen, and it's not very good. I get it, it's old, it's one of the first ever made, but aside from the colors moving down, there's not really much here, not even an audio tune, which they could have made one if they wanted to. The 5200 wasn't a mute console. This is as simple as it gets, and I'm not impressed, Atari. This is not a good intro. Atari consoles back to back, huh? Yeah, this is basically the same thing. There's not much to say about the 7800 intro. It's similar to the last one. The only notable difference here is the Atari text is now covered in colored lines. Honestly, you could switch positions with the previous Atari startup. Both are equally bad. Sorry Atari, but you failed once again. Everybody loves the Wii U, but this has got to be one of the worst startups out there. It starts with a Nintendo logo on a white background, and then it lazily fades into the Wii U logo. Now where's the fun in that? To be fair, the jingle is cute. I love how it sounds like a slightly modern and longer version of the Wii startup sound, but it goes for way too long. It shouldn't take 16 seconds to load into the home screen. Listen, I think the Wii U is an underappreciated system that gave us some great titles. But I can't defend an intro like this. This is just a felony. Oh look, my first hot take. I'm sorry guys, but the Wii intro always rubbed me the wrong way. Starting with the positive, the jingle sounds great and everyone has heard it at some point of their lives. It's that iconic. The moment you heard that sound, you knew you were about to spend hours playing Calvin Tucker's Sad Mac Jamboree. It was great. I never had a Wii. Let's talk about the boot up animation and the lack thereof. This is the problem. This is why I never got the hype surrounding it. What the f*** is warning health and safety? And where's the Wii logo? At least the Wii U showed what console you were playing on. This is just disappointing. Fine, if you want to be a funny lad, you can see the logo is right there on the bottom left corner, but really dude? Do you really want to go there? It's gotta be nostalgia, right? This startup is universally loved by everybody, and nostalgia aside, this startup is just not good. It's just an else warning with a tune, even the CDI can do better. But it marked millions of childhoods, just like the consoles I played growing up. Maybe you don't feel the same way I do about a console I played at 5 years old, and that's okay. I might not fully understand the Wii intro and why people love it so much, but I respect it. That's it for the F tier. Now let's move over to the D tier, cause I hate the letter that starts with E, damn it! On the bottom of D tier, we have the PS4 startup screen. A simple blue background with one of my favorite menu themes of any console. It's not anything crazy and honestly, a bit of a letdown compared to previous Sony consoles. I remember stumbling upon a video of the supposed PS4 startup back in the day, and it looked sweet. If Sony went with something like this, believe me, this would easily make it to the A tier at least. Unfortunately, it was a fake. This was an animation made by Onibox on YouTube and, well, they definitely got me. I don't like this startup, but that background music on the other hand, oh man, I never expected to feel nostalgic over the PS4 menu music, but dude, I miss the PS4. I might have a soft spot for the PS4, but I still think this intro was such a disappointment. And next up, we have the PS5? The PS5 over the PS4? Yeah, hate me too for saying that, but this was one of the few times I looked to a boot up screen and went, holy shit, this is next gen. We finally made it to the next generation of consoles, boys. Unfortunately, it suffers the same problem as the PS4's. The little animation in the beginning is cute, but overall it's really plain and pales in comparison to almost every startup I have on the list. It was a step in the right direction, but not enough. Okay, Sony? Not enough. It's bleak. The CDI was a weird console and holds the world record of having 0 fans. Every time I see this intro, I can't help but think of old YouTube poops of Hotel Mario and the Zelda CDI games. That was the best thing that came out of the CDI. The jingle is nice, but overall, this startup is not very good and it's only memorable if you consumed a lot of YTPs and ethanol back in the day. I had to break it down to you, but this ain't it, chief. The original Game Boy featured a simple yet iconic boot-up animation. We have the Nintendo logo descending into the piss screen and it finishes off with a sound I've heard more times than I can count. I can count to 7. I don't like this intro. It's just so basic. They could have at least been a little creative. It always bothered me why Nintendo chose their logo instead of the Game Boy one. Wouldn't that make more sense? The Game Boy line has some of the coolest startup screens in Nintendo history, but the first one was always a miss. This one is so overused, I can't. The Xbox One boot-up animation is not bad. Actually, I think it's fine. Yes, it's the worst Xbox startup screen, but not for much. I'm just tired of seeing it. Microsoft always featured this animation in every material relating to Xbox One. For example, every Xbox One commercial ended with this logo, and it's just so boring, man. And this is after the Xbox 360 boot-up screen, which is one of the best Xbox logos. It's whatever. Even without the commercials, I think this boot-up screen is still deserving of the D tier. Is it over? Are we finally done with the D tiers? Great, here's my favorite video game. It's called C. And here we have the Super Game Boy and Super Game Boy 2 startups. I decided to group these together because they're the exact same. I think it's a fine intro. The jingle is the highlight though. It sounds great, but the animation is pretty simple. The Xbox Series X and S's startup animation is simple, but it works, and it wasn't overused to death like the Xbox One's. I like how it fades into existence, but I gotta say, the Xbox branding during this generation is soulless compared to previous gens. We only get some hints of green when last generation we had nothing but green. Minimalism is killing Xbox, man. I only want my green branding back. Thank you. The Master System is often forgotten about, but it was big in Europe and primarily Brazil. It's an interesting system, though it never got the respect it deserved in the US. This is the Master System startup animation that played on the NTSC version of the console, in other words, the American version. It's pretty basic, so I think it makes sense to place it on the C tier. This is the second version of the PS3 startup. After the release of the PS3 Slim and the new marketing campaign surrounding the console, a new intro was made with the new PS3 logo with a shorter orchestral tune, and because of the latter, this version is significantly worse than the original. We'll get to the original intro in a sec, but it had just the perfect length to make it a powerful boot up. This one cuts right into the chase, and I don't like that. This one starts off great. Really great actually. I actually thought Xbox was making a good startup after the original Xbox One, but then it awkwardly transitions into the Xbox One boot-up screen. Why? You could have ended right there and it would be fine. This one's tricky. The original N-Gage was a Nokia phone that could also play video games. It had physical cards and all. Now, the N-Gage 2.0 was a software included in select Nokia devices that could let you download games and track progress of said games. So it's technically not a gaming console. But I decided to include it anyways, because I wanted to include something N-Gage related. That console kicks ass. Okay, the N-Gage did have a boot-up screen, but I want to glaze the system, not shame it to death. D tier. The 2.0 has a pretty fun startup, but since this was an error in my part, I'm giving it the C tier. Even if it was from an actual console, I probably wouldn't put it much higher, honestly. Remember the Neo Geo CD? Nobody had this thing, but its startup is not bad. I don't have much to say about this one. I'll save my comments to the Neo Geo CDZ segment, since it has a similar animation and got a higher ranking. Neo Geo back to back. The Neo Geo Pocket startup is not doing anything crazy, but I quite like it. The music reminds me of old school puzzle games from the Game Boy era. It's a fun intro, but nothing outstanding. I do love that P though. Fuck! Did the CTI deafen my ears? Why can't I hear anything? So, this isn't technically a console startup. When you turn the 3DS on, you get nothing. It takes you directly to the home screen. This 3DS intro only appears when you boot up a game, and it's okay. Again, the lack of music or sound effects is lame. I'm gonna sound like an hypocrite, but if they had used the animation from the beginning of some 3DS commercials as a boot up screen, it would have been cool. From what I know, they only use this intro in European and Japanese ads, so it wouldn't feel too overused if you're American. It's an okay startup screen. This one's funny. Yup, the Atari Jaguar is this high on the list. But before I tell you how much they're paying me, let me explain. The Atari Jaguar startup animation is not only fun, but genuinely impressive. The Jaguar came out in 1993, before the release of the PS1 and N64. People were still playing the SNES and Genesis, and even though the 3DO was already on store shelves, that Jaguar cube on the Atari Jaguar's boot up might have converted some folks to Atari. Look at it. It's a smoothly rotating cube with a considerably high quality image of a Jaguar. Trust me, I never touched an Atari Jaguar with a 10-foot pole, but this intro had something to it. It showed what the Jaguar was capable of. But more than 3 decades later, yeah, this is just ridiculous. Used toilet paper. The Ouya? Really gone? Did you really go that low? Well, yeah. The Ouya was an Android-based microconsole that got its start on Kickstarter. The project raised $8.5 million, and in 2013, the Ouya was released, and not many people cared. Bringing mobile games to the big screen sounds like an interesting idea, but it ended up as a commercial flop, and the Ouya was discontinued in 2015, with 200,000 units sold. Damn. It wasn't a particularly good console, but its startup literally screams loud and proud its name. It's a simple 4-second animation, but that scream is super memorable, even if you've never played an Ouya. It sits comfortably on top of the C tier. Wow, Ouya, you finally won on something. And lost 23 times more. Welcome to the B tier. Now we're getting into some classics and genuinely good startups. Literally everything above average. They'd never make me hate you. The Game Boy Color boot-up screen was a massive upgrade from the original Game Boys. Look at that, we have the Game Boy logo this time, and it's in color. Just like the name. I really like the startup. It's simple, but clever. The little rainbow transition of the logo is really cool and emphasizes that this is the next step. The Game Boy Color. People always say that the Game Boy Color is just an updated version of the Game Boy and not a successor, but I truly believe otherwise. The Game Boy Color was a successor, and this intro proves it. 6 minutes? Jesus! The Japanese Master System boot-up screen is awesome. It encapsulates everything about the Master System. 3D backgrounds that feel straight out of old-school rail shooters, 8-bit arcade music, and the Sega logo, of course. The background music is actually from the arcade game Space Harrier, a third-person rail shooter that was later ported to the Master System. I've never played this console, but this boot-up screen gives me the feels, and I wasn't even alive back then. Normally, I would only include the American version of the intro, but this one deserves to be here. It's really underrated. Just like the system it's from. Yep, here's everyone's favorite, the Neo Geo CDZ intro. The CDZ was an upgrade for the Neo Geo CD and was only released in Japan. It had faster load times and a top-loader design, which gave it better ventilation. It's an interesting piece of SNK history, but it has become a collector's item, and buying one could cost you a pretty penny. Like I mentioned during the Neo Geo CD segment, I'm giving my full thoughts here, which aren't a lot. The logo animation is interesting, nothing too crazy, just some logos flying onto the screen. But what saves the startup screen and puts it above the CD logo is the audio. Now this is a great showcase of CD quality audio. This is some powerful stuff. I think what other early CD based consoles like the 3DO and CDI failed to do was show what the console was capable of, audio wise. But the CDC does that perfectly, and it's a great boot up. Here's the most recent console on the list. The Switch 2 startup screen is something you only see when firing up the console for the first time, which is honestly a shame. It's so fun, man. Hey, people always talk about the Switch 1 logo animation, but I'd say the Switch 2's is on the same level as the Switch 1's, but I still gave the edge to the original. Yeah, it makes sense. It just makes sense to put this one above the Switch 2. If you were there on day 1, you know how magical this boot up is. After 5 years of constant failure, except for the 3DS, Nintendo released the Switch in early 2017, and the hype was real. Finally, a decent console. And with Breath of the Wild as a launch title, it had to be a success. And it was. And that's why every time I hear this startup animation, it always reminds me of Breath of the Wild. It was an awesome time to be alive, and this startup is not only iconic, but will be remembered for generations to come. Hell yeah! Nothing beats the classic Neo Geo intro. The other Neo Geo startups are good in their own right, but this one is simply awesome, and that music is so good I could bust a move right now. This intro is prominently known from the arcades, but the Neo Geo MVS also used it, and if you had one, you were rich. Great console startup. It's simple, it's clean, I love this boot up. The DS intro is exactly how the 3DS intro should have been. And it's fast, clocking in at just 4 seconds. It's exactly how it should be, but it's not perfect and there's some better ones out there. Similarly to the PS3, Microsoft decided to create a downgraded version of the 360 startup. Yep, they released a firmware update that gave us a new dashboard and a new boot up screen. I'd say it's not as bad as the PS3's, but still a downgrade nonetheless from the original. I still like it though, and I know you guys love it too. It's great. Sony really knows how to create a killer since. So, the PSX was a multimedia system that basically worked like a DVR, but could also play PS1 and PS2 games. The PSX was also the first time Sony used the X-Ross Media Bar interface, which would later be used on the PSP and PS3. Many people don't know about this thing because it was only released in Japan and was really expensive. This is a simple intro. Honestly, way too simple. But that synth, man, it sounds amazing. It feels straight out of the early 2000s. I originally had this intro at the top of the A tier, but it feels more reasonable to put it in the B tier. The jingle is cool, but the visuals, not so much. Subscribe to the Colossal Gon? Now how the f*** did that get in there? Welcome to the A tier. These are the perfect definition of an 8 out of 10 or even an 8.5. These are great. Contrary to popular belief, this is not the N64 boot up. The truth is that it never got one. This right here is the intro for the N64 DD, the failed disk drive add-on that only released in Japan. This one's cool. Not only we have a great jingle and a 3D logo, but we also got Mario running and sliding around and kicking the logo. Now how sick is that? Reasonably sick. The fact that it also told you the day and time is pretty interesting. It was something new at the time. The DD was a failure and had its run cut short before entering the US market. But this is a neat visual of what it could do, I guess. It's probably the best thing that came from this junk. Ah, the Sega Saturn. Sega's black sheep and the home of various underrated titles that make my wallet squeak. This is actually a combined entry since I decided to include the Japanese startup as well, which has a few differences. The most obvious one is the logo. Sega used an entirely different logo in Japan, and I can't say I like it very much. It's interesting, sure, and it has some fans, but the international logo is so much cooler with the Saturn symbol. You can't deny that. The jingle is also different, and both sound great, but I prefer the Japanese version. That rising synth reminds me of the THX logo, and it has a mysterious feel to it. It's like this is some console from another planet, which I guess was their main intention, but I'm not sure. When I first discovered this startup, it quickly became one of my favorites. I really liked the Saturn growing up. Now that's what I'm talking about. I think I just grew a third leg. The Xbox 360 knew it was the first console of the 7th generation, before Sony, before Nintendo, and this startup screams victory. A victory that didn't last very long. Every time I saw this intro, my desire to touch the Xbox logo grew. I seriously thought the Xbox button on a 360 controller was a sphere. It wasn't. Childhood trauma. It's a great intro, and Microsoft has yet to top this one. The PSP is such a great console, man. What other console lets you play what the f*** on the go? I can think of a few. Is it just me, or does this feel like the predecessor to the PS3 intro? I mean, they do have some similarities, but I'm getting off track. I don't have much to say about this one, which is sad, because I grew up with the PSP. It was one of the first handheld consoles I ever played. The only thing I can say is that it's special. That's all I've gotta say. It's simple, but the visuals are nice. beautiful. Do I have to say more? This is perfection. This is the first console on the list where, upon hearing this startup, the best games the PS3 had to offer come flooding into my mind. MGS4, Little Big Planet, Uncharted, PlayStation Home. You can't get any more simpler than this, a colored background with an orchestral tuning. But it works. It just works. The PS3 might have costed $600 at launch, but this startup screams power. Not only did you have the latest PlayStation console, but also a powerhouse in the comfort of your home. And my point still stands. That extended orchestral tuning is absolutely necessary, and the new version butchered it. But I have one critique of this intro. I don't mind the Sony Computer Entertainment text, but wouldn't it be cooler if they had just gone with the PS3 logo there? They later made this change with the new intro, so I guess it gets a point over the original. Oh, and I didn't even mention that when you boot up a game, the old PS3 logo with the Spider-Man font appears. I wonder why they removed it in the new version. Bottom line, this boot up is great, and it shouldn't have been changed. So, I kinda cheated with this one. In case you don't know, the Steam Deck startup animation is completely customizable. It can literally be whatever you want. I've seen some creations online and they're genuinely amazing. The default startup intro is pretty good by itself, but since it has the customization factor to it, I've gotta at least give it the S tier. I wish more companies would do the same. I love this community aspect of the Steam Deck. It's cool. Yup, that's the Dreamcast alright. The Dreamcast intro has a mysterious yet dreamy feel to it. Like, yeah, this is exactly how a console called Dreamcast should sound like. It's a memorable boot-up screen, though it's not the best rendition of the Dreamcast intro. Wait, there's more? I've always had a soft spot for this intro. It's so different compared to previous Sega consoles. The Dreamcast was truly something special. Here's where it all began, and I regret it every single moment. This is one of the most iconic startups in all of gaming, easily top 3. Nostalgia aside, this boot-up screen is genius. I think everybody knows at this point, but the tower's lengths in the PS2 intro are determined by how many games you have saved on your memory card. Now that's insane. I love that addition. It makes me feel like all of these experiences are a part of something bigger. It's great. And how could I forget about the jingle? Did you know it's the sound of a piano crashing down? And then we have the red screen of death, which appeared if you inserted a faulty disc onto the PS2. I never got it because I was a good boy and my games worked, but this scared a lot of people back in the day. The PS2 boot-up screen sits comfortably in the middle of S tier. This is the best handheld console startup of all time, and it's not even close. The Game Boy Advance was my first Nintendo console, and this is most likely the startup I've seen the most times. See, my GBA never worked properly and it had some trouble reading cartridges, so besides blowing on the cartridges, I was always turning it on and off in hopes that it would miraculously work. I'd say every 30 tries it booted up correctly, but it didn't last long since it froze all the time. I mean, you can't argue with this placement. It has an iconic jingle, and the way the letters appear is simply awesome. The jump from the Game Boy Color to the Advance was huge, and by looking at this, you can tell. The first time I saw the original Xbox startup animation, I wasn't the biggest fan. I don't know, it just never clicked with me the same way the others did. But recently, I found myself growing fond of this intro, and the original Xbox in general. It's such a weird console. The games were already there, like Halo and Fable, but Microsoft was still trying to figure things out identity-wise. That's why we got stuff like the Duke controller, which looks more like a Dreamcast controller than the 360 controller. The OG Xbox had an otherworldly feel, and this intro conveys that very well. Here we have this green goo pulsating before transitioning into this beautiful logo that I wish had never been changed. I like the 360 logo, but I fear nothing beats the green X. I'd like to get more into the OG Xbox. I think there's some really interesting stuff to explore and talk about with this console. So what comes after S? I don't know. Let's add another S and call it a day. Now this is powerful. You don't need anything else. This is perfect. Only the PS1 could have a basic-ass intro and still make it this high on the list. The PS1 startup screen is nothing crazy. It starts with the Sony Computer Entertainment logo on a white background, and then it switches to the PlayStation logo on a black background, which, fun fact, is actually a 3D model. But I've gotta compliment that music, or whatever you wanna call it. This is what makes the original PS1 intro so special. The first half prepares you for what's to come, and the second half gives you satisfaction. And by that I mean, thank God it worked, or I'd get this shit. You can't go wrong with the PS1 startup screen. It's a classic. Do I even need to explain? It doesn't get any more perfect than this. The GameCube knows what it is, and that reflects in the boot-up screen. I think the best word to describe this intro is playful. This is a playful yet genius startup logo. We begin with a little purple cube rolling up and down the screen, forming a G until it reveals the GameCube logo. I hope the guy who came up with this is having a fantastic night, because this is genius. But did you know there are two secret startups? Yep, by holding the Z button, you get the funny version, and by holding the Z button with 4 controllers plugged in, you get this one, which is pretty neat. I love the GameCube intro, but I'm genuinely struggling to come up with things to say about it. You already know it's great, no need to keep beating around the bush. So let's get into the final startup on the list, the best console startup. In my opinion. Wasn't it obvious? Show me logo hopping on the screen with angelic music and we're golden. Folks, I want to talk about the Dreamcast Dev Kit startup logo, because nobody does. But first, we've got to talk about the Katana. The Katana was the name given to the Dreamcast's dev kit that developers used to make games for the console. This thing is a beast. Yeah, console dev kits tend to be bigger than the retail versions, but this is a whole tower, way bigger than the Dreamcast itself. The Katana featured a completely different startup from consoles sold in stores, but since these were made before the retail version, the dev kit intro was probably the original Dreamcast boot-up. Maybe it was planned for the final version, but for some reason, it got changed to the one we all know. I've heard somewhere that some early Dreamcast demo kiosks had this intro, but I can't confirm if that's legit. The intro starts with a dot forming the Dreamcast swirl, followed by the console's name hopping onto the screen to form the logo. And in the background, we have a beautiful synth that has always reminded me of Koopa Troopa Beach from Mario Kart 64. It's gotta be the same instrument, right? These visuals are something you just don't see nowadays. God forbid companies make a fun and whimsical startup animation. I understand why these intros don't exist anymore. Consoles need to boot up faster, and going simple is the easiest route. But I like when game consoles don't take themselves too seriously. The Dreamcast was the perfect console for this sort of thing, and while it ended up going in a more simplistic direction, I feel this version encapsulates the system much better. I'm in love with the Dreamcast aesthetic. Heck, I even bought the Dreamcast theme on the new 2DS XL. But I always thought the original startup logo felt a bit off. It didn't really fit the console style. But this one does, and the devs took it from us. It's dreamy, it's fun, and it gets you pumped for what's to come. The Dreamcast had a vision, but we just couldn't see it. And that's why this is my personal favorite console startup. Here's the final list, and before you hit me with a stick, do you want me to sharpen it?